Hi everybody, I'm Jesse Quinalty, and this is Firefighters and Fire Trucks Getting Ice Cream. Welcome back to part 2 of episode 5 with Chief John Salka from the FDNY. We're cruising through Hollywood in a 1972 brown fire coach, which was originally first due for this area for the LA City Fire Department in Hollywood. John and I were teaching at Firehouse World in LA, and we had a chance to hook up and go get some ice cream. Here we are arriving at Cold Rolled Ice Cream Company on Melrose Avenue. So it's funny, we're talking about you teaching it all around and all that kind of stuff. I don't remember if you remember the first time I actually met you. We were at FDIC, and it's a crazy story. So I'm down in the speaker ready room.
Okay.
First conference I'd ever taught at was FDIC.
Yeah, you remember it, right?
So I'm down in the speaker ready room, and I'm messing with my PowerPoint, getting it ready. And I'm sitting next to another guy, and he is burning a CD of his presentation. He's actually using DVDs. This presentation is so huge, it's on a DVD, and he's got 2 spools of these things that he's burning and burning and burning. And I'm watching him burn these things. It's taking like a half hour every time he burns one. Well, Red Helmet training, we have a stack burner, and that's what we used to do. We used to literally burn all of the PowerPoints and give them to the students when we first started to give them added value. So I finish up what I'm doing, and I don't know who he is. I ask this guy, I go, hey, I'll help. I'm done with what I'm doing. So I start burning these DVDs with them, and I tell this guy, I'm like, this is going to take forever. So I said, I'll tell you what, if you allow me, I'll take your PowerPoint, I'll put it into a PowerPoint show, and I'll put it in Red Helmet Training's Dropbox. Because that's what we did. We went from the CD DVD model, and we just went to Dropbox and said, hey, here's some cool stuff in our Dropbox you can go to
it online.
Right. So I take his PowerPoint, it's like 200 and something slides, convert it over to a show. I said, nobody can edit it unless they're smarter than the PowerPoint, and we'll put it in Dropbox. And so I find out it's actually Raul from Seattle Fire, right? So he goes, I'm taking you to dinner tonight. Meet me down here in the lobby of the hotel, 7 p.m., we're gonna go to dinner. So I meet him down there in the lobby, we get right in the elevator, we're going to the top floor, which I think is going to be a restaurant up on the top floor. It's Bobby Halton's room, and he walks me through there, introduces me to you and Rick Lasky and all these guys. Oh yeah, I was just, and new instructor to the whole conference team. I'm like, I called my business partner and my wife after that, my real partner. I said, you'll never, I'm sitting in a room right now with John Salka and Rick Lasky.
And Bobby Halton. Oh man,
yeah.
Cool.
And then from there, I mean, it was able to spur into the Learning from Leaders program. We did that one year.
Connections, right? And you know what's great about firefighters? All those you mentioned already, and everybody else, and yourself, and your friends here today, we're all the same.
Right.
We're all the same.
Right.
And that's what people say all the time. I can't believe how humble you guys are. I said, we're just firefighters, just like everybody else. So we write some articles and we teach now, but we're all the same guys. You know?
Yeah. It's, me and Mikey G were talking about it not too long ago. He's actually like talking about putting together an article right now on, so you want to be a fire service instructor? Because it's not, you know, it takes
it's
time.
such a little group that a lot of guys don't know how to get into. I was with a fellow last night for dinner from, where the heck did he say he was from? Big department, Nashville. And he's at a training academy. He's an officer and great young man.
Right.
Ryan Pennington and myself and he. And I told him last night, I said, listen, I just met you, but you sound like a sharp guy, man. Write a couple articles. You could be doing what we're doing, you know, a year or 2 or 5 from now.
Right.
And I said, send it to me. I'll get it to Pete. We'll try and get it in the firehouse and try and get you on the map, you know?
Yeah.
And that's the way to do it.
And it takes time. That's the hard part, you know. I was hanging out with Bobby Drake. Do you know him from Virginia?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was hanging out with Bobby Drake, and he came down here, and we were talking about it. It's just like, how much money does it cost to hit all these conferences? Because it doesn't reimburse the whole thing that you get, and a lot of instructors don't understand that. It's like, it barely covers your airfare and those types of things.
You start paying.
Right.
And then eventually you get to breaking even and pay expenses.
Right.
And then eventually you get to coming home with a couple bucks, you know?
Right. Occasionally you'll get a paying gig out of it, you know, and it takes time.
But it is fun. It is, and you know, Bobby's the one that got me going to Firehouse. I was a fireman in Rescue 3, and He was a buff hanging around. We all knew him.
Right.
He talked me into writing an article. I said, "You talking to me? You write an article?" Yeah, you're right. You're a young guy, and you know what? I wrote an article and he published it. I was like, "Look at me, man! I'm publishing Firehouse Magazine." You know, I wrote a few more, and before you know it, a year, maybe two, I don't recall. He said, "Hey, why don't you come to Baltimore? You can do a presentation?" I'm like, I don't know about that, but anyway, you know, here we are 30 years
When
later.
you did the first article, you were a firefighter or you were...
Firefighter in Rescue 3.
Wow.
Yep. I remember the article. It was using the power saw. And you take the blade, you don't have the power saw. The motor's here, the arm comes off, and the blade is on the left. Pretty much centered. You can actually switch that blade around to the outside for flush cutting. So if you wanted to cut a line at the base of that cabinet, you couldn't do it with the saw the way it's configured normally.
Right.
And that was how I wrote the article.
Just moving it from inboard to outboard.
Yep, and it's acceptable for the machine. It's in the regulations. It's in the the manual. But and I just went on from there. God knows I can't even remember what I wrote last month. But I just keep writing.
But you remember the first article, of course.
Yeah. It's been great though. It's been great.
And then how did you and Lasky get tied into where you're teaching together a lot?
Actually, at a show again, FDIC. I was doing hands-on. He was doing hands-on. I was doing Get Out Alive, training your firefighters to get out alive, which is an article I wrote in Firehouse a year or two earlier. We had lost, I think we lost 11 firefighters in 23 months or something. It was obscene.
Wow. 2
or 3 at a time, 1 at a time, but it was a lot of incidents. Anyway, I ended up putting an article together saying, train your firefighters to get out alive. Here's some skills you should have. Room orientation, know where you are, stay oriented. Window bail, how to get out a window with a piece of rope and quickly slide down, decades before all the devices and the belts and stuff. And Black Sunday, which I knew all those guys. Wall breach, pretty basic skill, but again, you gotta know what to do. And ladder bail, how to get out, jump out onto a ladder, and then climb the rest of the way down. And those 4 skills was my Get Out Alive program. He was doing Saving Our Own, which was RIT team stuff, how to go in and drag guys out and get them out the window and lower guys down and stuff. And they always had us near each other because a lot of the folks and the firefighters that took my class would take his in the afternoon and vice versa. So we just take pretty much 2 classes, and at lunch we swap them, with the exception of 2 guys that would leave and 2 different guys would come in. Finally, Bobby and the guy said, "Listen, we're just going to put your classes together, and it's morning and then afternoon, or vice versa." And we were doing like 300 or 400 guys a year. Those 2 classes. I'd have like 200 in the morning or 150 in the morning, and so would he, and then we'd swap at lunch. Before, John Norman actually introduced us first. At FDIC in a hallway somewhere. And Rick kids around, he said, "Yeah, you're lieutenant in the squad, you had the big mustache and everything." Which I do remember.
Right.
Not so fondly, but and now we are best of friends. We travel all over the country together.
Just to think about the times when literally you guys were doing hot classes. I mean, those are the days.
Seems like yesterday. They weaned us off that. Bobby said, "All right, you're doing 2 days or 3 days. We're gonna have you come off one of the days, have your crew leader finish it the next day." And we did that for a couple of years. Then they said, "All right, we want you inside all the time now, and just let your teams do it." And then that lasted a few years, and then that sort of faded. And sometimes places just run their course. And so now all my guys are all retired, and Rick and I are just doing our classroom stuff. But it's great.
And we were kind of talking in the rig before, but I think it got loud and I was trying to get lost. So we started talking about the 5 parts of 5-alarm leadership.
Right.
So
there's not actually 5 parts. There's a lot of parts to it. And we talk about preparation. We talk about abilities, about being competent and having a competent crew and having relationships with your people and building relationships in a firehouse. The firehouse is where everything starts and where everything ends. You could call them stations out here or fire halls and the volunteers some places.
Right.
That's where it all starts. And it's not just, and we talk to both volunteer and career people. We're just not only career, We talk about volunteer and career. I've been a volunteer for 40 years now. I'm going through the Chief's ranks for the 2nd time in my local volunteer fire department. And we talk about establishing relationships in a firehouse. And it's so hard to do in the fire service because, there's a couple of things. We are so social and we are so friendly, even in the ranks. Like that, I think it was a captain in the LA firehouse that we were just in, came up and introduced himself as Bill. Bill, hi, I'm Bill, I'm Jonathan. And I know that was a social introduction, so we used his first name, but I never had anybody call me anything but lieutenant, cap, or it would be Lou, cap, or chief in the firehouse.
Right.
Even today, 7 years after being retired, I'll be with my wife at Home Depot. I'll run into a firefighter and his wife, and he'll say, "Oh, Mary, this is Chief Salka. I told you all about him. I used to work with him." And I say, "This is my wife, Dawn." And I'm still Chief Salka. I'm retired 6 years, and I'm in an aisle at Home Depot. And the other thing we talk about a lot is, establishing those relationships between firefighters and officers, supervisors, bosses, whatever you want to call them, leaders, right? And you know, how successfully we do that. Unlike, let's say, the cops. I'm not knocking the cops at all, but the cops are much more regimented, much more official. He's a sergeant, you were all patrolman. There's no sergeants and cops hanging around in the TV room in the firehouse, kidding around, making lunch with each other, or spraying water on their ears or anything. You know what I'm saying? Like, so we have that wonderful thing that we have, but then all of a sudden, once or twice a year, or a week or a month, depending on where you live, all of a sudden you got to turn into a boss. All of a sudden you got to raise your voice or call somebody in and say, "This is not happening." It's the same guy that you were just kidding around with in the kitchen an hour earlier, you know, cooking the stew or playing handball.
Right.
Cops don't have that issue. Sergeant's always a sergeant in the station, out on the road, when he's yelling at you, when it's a crime scene. But we have to flip-flop back and forth from this buddy to boss thing, you know, and because we never really are truly a full boss. I mean, it's good if you can establish that, and I always did. I never had a problem. Right. I can't say that I'm socially involved with or socially friendly with a whole lot of people from the job. I mean, all of my good friends are firefighters that I worked with as firefighters, but if you can balance that, if you can be a good boss and be respected, be a good leader, and when you call a shot, your people don't question it, they call you Lou and Cap at work, and then if you are friendly on the outside, you still go to the same events and parties and stuff, family functions, and it can still be social, that's wonderful. That's the best situation. Some people can't. I know some guys can't do it, and they don't do the social thing. They
or at least limit what type of social thing you're going to.
Right, maybe you go to a wedding or a reception or something, but you don't go to too many backyard pool parties.
Right. Once the wedding starts getting to the point where there are certain things going on, it's like, hey.
I've left a lot of events early. Told my wife, time to go.
Right.
She said, oh, it's just warming up. I said, I know. That's the point.
I don't want to have to do my job here.
Right, I don't want to have to be the lieutenant. And technically, and emotionally, and socially, you're a boss even in social settings, even outside the firehouse. If you're a lieutenant or captain, there's an expectation of you not allowing ridiculous stuff to happen. And if you don't want to be part of that, you should go home early.
Yeah. And it shouldn't be the more you promote, the less friends you have. I mean, you could still be friends with them, but you definitely limiting where you actually take that friendship to.
You have to pay more attention, closer attention, to what type of situations you put yourself in.
Right. Yeah, in that, we go back to that managing employee fires, we talk about, you know, sometimes you're going into the rescue mode. You're not taking command of that managing the employee fire. You're going to the rescue mode, and unfortunately, sometimes the would-be rescuer becomes a victim themselves. But to save that firefighter, you might have to do that, you know, but if you can keep yourself from being in those bad positions.
Sometimes a little pre-planning, a little forethought, a little long distance, you know, scouting sometimes goes a long way.
Even to the point where certain stations I won't pick up overtimes just because I know that's a hazmat station.
You know, there was one or two places in the job that I worked in, you know, in the FDNY, there was one or two places over all the years, 33 years in 4 different ranks, one or two places that I can tell you I didn't really enjoy working in. You know, most of the rest of them were fantastic, but it's true.
Yeah. Yeah, in my fire department, I call it a hazmat station. It's a toxic environment. I just try not to pick up overtimes there.
There's not many of them, but they're there.
Technically, if you ask my department, we have 2 hazmat stations. I said, there's probably a couple more than that.
That's right. That's a good term.
Right.
I'm going to remember that one.
Yeah.
I'll tell you an interesting topic that was brought up. I think it was last year at one of the shows. I was on the stage. Actually, it was at FDIC. I was with Bobby and Rec. We do the current issues in the fire service. It's a big room session. Pretty much an open mic. You know, we bring issues in ourselves that we bring up to get the ball rolling. But then folks in the audience start to ask questions. Young woman came up one day to the microphone that day and said, "Oh, Chief, this question's for Chief Salka." She specified me, and she said, "I have a question, Chief." She said, "Now that you're at the end of your career, you're retired, you're looking back, you have a lot of years of service behind you, and what kind of advice would you have for a new firefighter, a new officer, somebody who's on the beginning end, the starting end of their career? Any advice? Any quick one-liners?" I said, "Yeah, I got a good one for you." She said, "What?" "Spend more time at home." There was almost a hush in the audience when I said that. You know, I said, and I've learned it, and I haven't suffered. I haven't suffered any real negative impacts because of it. I know guys that are divorced. I know guys that have no relationships with a couple of their children because of things that happened or didn't happen over the course of their career. And that's one of the unfortunate things about having the best job in the world, the fire service, is sometimes it's so good that we'd love being there, not more than, but we get pulled in all the time. Oh, another shift, another overtime. Oh, today's Billy's getting promoted. I got to go to the ceremony. Oh, tomorrow's the extra training session. I told the guys I would go. And before you know it, your real number one family at home is starting to suffer. Sometimes quietly because they're being loyal and faithful to you, and they know you love your job, and it's a great place to be. So, when in doubt, if you're ever sitting in the car or sitting in the hallway or laying in bed in the morning thinking, gee, should I go to that class today or should I stay home with the kids? If you're asking yourself the question, I have the answer for you. Stay home. Spend another day at home. I said, because I'm retired. I said, the job does disappear. All of this eventually disappears. It's what we are and it's who we are, and it's so much bigger than a lot of other people's careers, but it still is just a job. And in the end, after a year or two, the job will fade away, and then you'll be left with whatever it is you cultivated over the last 20 years. And some guys are left with a two-room flat with a hot plate and a bare light bulb because the wife's gone and the kids really don't talk to them that much. And other guys are left with a beautiful home full of children and grandchildren because they paid attention to their family and they split it up evenly, or at least appropriately. There's no evenness here, but so I thought that was a pretty interesting point. Non-fire related, but certainly related to the work that all of us do.
Especially on top of it when you're teaching all the time.
It's an added thing. It's an added event on top of your work shift, your commuting, maybe your volunteer fire department, or your thing that you do in town, the Boy Scouts with, and also now there's another thing. Now you're traveling and teaching. So it's quite a juggling.
Right. Well, when you look back on your career, right, and you obviously 9/11 and Black Sunday, what's one of your personal most memorable events or fires or that you can recall that really kind of changed your outlook on the job itself?
It's so hard to say. I worked in classy places. I worked in quality firehouses, and everybody thinks that too because most are, but I really did. I worked in great places. I went to 11 Truck on the Lower East Side when it was rocking and rolling. They were all good, experienced senior people. That's where I became a fireman. I was a fireman somewhere else, a firefighter earlier at 34 Engine. Relatively, inactive unit with good people, who I coincidentally later found out. When I was there and when I left, I thought that was just sort of a bunch of old guys hanging out and hiding out. And years later, I spent no time thinking about it because I was just trying to get out of there from the day I got there, and I did. I got right to a busy place, and then to a squad, then to a rescue, and I had a great career. Years later, I found out most of those older guys that I never really got to know or talk to were really good senior firefighters from busy places all around the city that had gone there for their last year or two, just sort of to relax and gear down, and I missed it. And I never got to talk to them. I wish some of them are passed now. I've gone to funerals and wakes for some of them. And I wish I got to know those guys better. Because although the atmosphere was, oh, here we are hiding out, they weren't. They were just sort of relaxing and waiting to hit the exit door. And I sort of regret not getting to know them. But all the rest of the places I went to were great and busy and were tough to get into because they were busy,
Right.
And I just had great experience from 11 Truck, learning how to be a firefighter, and learning how to hold on to your tools, and learning to come in early. And I learned it from all different people. In the FDNY, firefighters are instructors, firefighters are mentors. They really break in the young firefighters, certainly with the approval and of the officers. They're allowing that to happen. But I learned so many things about. Here's a great story. I'm in 11 Truck one day, and I'm the can man, so I get a 2.5 gallon extinguisher and a hook, and it's maybe a vacant or an old crummy building, and we're up pulling ceilings, maybe the 4th floor in the rear, and my senior guy, Richie Botto, who was. I think he's still alive, but he got terribly sick after he retired. He was a great guy. He's the guy that broke me in. And he says, Sammy, another long story why they called me Sammy. There was about 8 Johns in the firehouse, so they give you another name. So Sammy, give me your hook. There was a couple of guys between me and him. He says, give me your hook. I got to pull some ceiling here. I said, no, Richie, I'm not giving you my hook. That's an old trick, right? You don't give your tool up. He said, no. Really, I just want to pull something real quick. I said, Richie, I'm not doing it. He said, give me the damn hook. We'll be out of here in a minute. So I hand him my hook. He takes it and throws it out the back window from the 5th floor, out the back window, into the yard. I'm like, and he looks at me, shakes his head. So I go, bum, walk down the stairs to the 1st floor, out the front door. Chiefs are out there, command post, everybody's looking at what are you doing? Down the driveway or whatever it was on the side, the alleyway, pick my hook up and come back up, and it was just a great lesson. I have dozens of those lessons, and they all pretty much started and ended like that, So the answer is everywhere. I worked in great places and learned. There was no moment of enlightenment. Certainly things like 9/11 and these tragic incidents that everybody goes through eventually were heightened moments maybe of a reflection of what we do and how important it is and how lucky we are. But I had little fires with 4 companies and 1 alarm that I learned a lot at too. So.
Well, we always talk about that the people that have been on the department for a while need to make sure that they're mentoring those younger members, but it's also teaching those younger members to be able to extract that information out of the people that have been on the department for a while. It takes tact, it takes because they are in those later years, they're getting ready to retire, and they might not want to go out and throw ladders with the
Right, oh, come on, let's go drill. No,
right.
no, the guy's 58 years old, he's retiring next year, his knee is bothering him, he doesn't want to go out and throw ladders.
Right.
But he's got 3 volumes of information inside of him that if you sit next to him in a TV room and say, hey, were you at that wall bound fire? Yeah, I was. And all of a sudden you're going to get a story that you're not going to read anywhere. Great, and I talked about that conforming thing when we were riding on the rig before. How people conform. And they don't know they're going to conform. They think they're just whoever they are. They look in the mirror, that's who they were yesterday. But then when they realize when you show up at the firehouse, you sort of morph into a different person. Because you're there for a different, it's your job. You're there to do something else. So, and a lot of times it's firefighters that break young men and women into that. Say, no, here's what we do here. Here's why you're coming early. You're not coming in early for a lieutenant. You're not coming in early for a paycheck. You don't get paid. You're coming in early for me, so I have time to talk to you and look at stuff and show you what happened today, and then you get a chance to look at it later tonight after I'm gone. There's a lot of things that all dovetail into a complete career and developing new people, especially.
Yeah. Well, and you have to be able to tap into that generation and get that information, because a lot of us aren't burning as often as we used to be.
Right.
And tapping into that. I mean, and really, it's kind of the cool thing with the Catalyst with this show. I've been able to hang out with Bruno Cini, and I've been able to hang out with Mittendorf,
and the list goes on and on. Tom Brennan and everybody else, right?
And it's knowledge that you got to be out there picking that up.
And when guys leave, not necessarily planet Earth, but when guys leave the job or they leave the lecture circuit, they're gone. They're gone. When a guy says I'm retiring, Jimmy Murtaugh is a friend of mine, retired deputy from FDNY, great mentor of mine, and always very helpful and inquisitive and talkative, and he was out doing this for many, many years. And I don't think it's 10, but between 5 and 10 years ago, he said, this is my last show. I just let everybody know. No big deal. No party, no nothing.
Right.
And we never saw him again. And that's it. I text
it wasn't the farewell tour?
No. I text him at Christmas time and say, hey, how's it going? Oh, pretty good. I'm going to be back up in Rockland County around Christmas. Maybe I'll call you. But it's true. Rick Lasky, my buddy Rick down in Louisville, he retired from there a couple of years ago now. And they do a lot of really great stuff. When a guy retires, they have like a whole retirement roll call. Guys come in off duty and all wear their uniforms and form up, and they have a great day of events. But one of the things they put together was a book, and it's stuff that guys leave for the department. And one of the questions in the book was, what building in Louisville would you never want to fight a fire in, and why? And guys write what type, and it's pages. So now a guy who just gets on the job last week can look at what the last 10 years of guys, the buildings they don't want to go in and why. And those buildings most of the time are still there.
Right.
They put a picture of it and stuff in there. So there's one item, just one little item, a book, and it's upon leaving. It's an exit interview kind of a thing. When you're leaving, you get to fill that in, and they got 100 of them in there,
Well, and how many times have you went and walked around a building and said, man, this place is on fire, it's going to be bad, but when it is on fire, we still end up going in anyway, because we don't have that really no, seriously, we're not going in.
And you know who did that? All the guys in Worcester. For years, they drove past that cold storage warehouse and said, oh boy, hope we never get anything there. And they buried 6 guys.
It's different between saying, well, I hope it never happens, or we hope we never go there for a fire, as opposed to we're not going in there if there is a fire, But following through on that, it's easier said than done.
And they have that now. They have the box now for vacant buildings. We've had it for decades in New York. A lot of people have copied it. A box, a red, yellow, green, whatever color it is, just means the building is vacant. Nobody's in there. There's no people in there. There shouldn't be. But it's okay. If there's a fire, go in and put it up. A box with one diagonal across. Either way, doesn't mean anything which way you go. Means the building's falling down a little bit. There might be holes in the floor. It might not be so good. Be careful if you're going there.
Right.
And that same box with 2, with an X in it, means no go. Do not go in here. Not go in and check. What do you think? The floors got better since they put the X on there? And as a chief, I had to do that a couple of times. Like, hey, 1-8. No. Hold on. No. See the box? We're not going in. Case closed. So company officers and chiefs sometimes are, harnessed with that responsibility of slowing people down, even when there's a sign there that says, don't even think about coming in here,
Well, especially you go back to the lives property saving model. I mean, obviously the lives, there's nobody inside there. And we also got to look at the property because it's still billowing some pretty good smoke, but there's no furniture inside there. So where's all that smoke coming from?
And that's a great point.
Building construction.
There's a great point. This is the building, the structure's involved here because it's vacant.
Right. And you go back to the transient debate, you know, the homeless person debate, and it's like, those fires start small. They have plenty of time to get out. It's not like a home where they were sleeping in there and the fire started, you know, or they're trying to save their own personal property.
I love to tell a story back to 11 Truck again when I was down there on the Lower East Side. A lot of vacant buildings and a lot of vacant building fires. And we did, obscenely silly is the best word I can use on camera, stuff. So I remember one time going to a vacant building, 6-story tenement, maybe fire on the 4th or the 5th floor in the rear. All the front windows are out, they're gone. There's no glass, there's no sash, there's no nothing. They put an aerial ladder up. Now if we don't put this fire out, this 2 hours from now, there's gonna be a 5th alarm. And it's gonna threaten the 2 occupied buildings next door. So even though the building is vacant, the occupied buildings next door are still part of the equation. We put the aerial ladder up to the 5th floor, in we go. The floor is all collapsed. Some of them will collapse and you can look through, some of them collapse, but you can see where the beams were. Walk across on the beams with your feet, with the hose, into the hallway. Hallway's better because the roof was existing over the hallway, but the stairs were gone. It was just a large opening the size of a stairway from here to here. Gone, all the way down to the 5th floor. You could look all the way down.
Wow.
So we scooted along the hallway to the back and we put the fire out. And we came back out. Nothing happened. You go to jail if you tried to do that today. That's obscenely unsafe and ridiculous and all sorts of other things. But in the day, back in that day, and we did have some valid points. We were still protecting the occupied buildings, knowing that if we didn't put this fire out, it was a front window, we might have got it from the street, maybe with a towel ladder or for a deck pipe, but it was in the rear. Things are crazy. When you start looking back, sometimes you realize, did I decide to do that or somebody else ought to be?
And it's hard to make that decision when you're with an aggressive fire department as a chief officer or as a company officer to say, you know what, there's no lives to save, there's no property to save. The only risk here is the ones we brought in the right fire engine, as Bernadine would say.
And then it reverts to a leadership, formula or a leadership event rather than a firefighting event. Now it's not about firefighting anymore. I already made the decision.
Command and control.
That's right. We're not going in there. We're not going up. Tell me when you're done, Cap. We're not going in there. Okay? Done. And maybe he doesn't talk to you for the rest of the shift or whatever. Maybe you have to heal that up some other time, but we should get the job done, Yeah. And it's not easy. I tell guys it's not easy. If you want to ride in the front seat, you be ready. You better be ready to do the job up in the front seat. If you don't want to do that, if you don't want to discipline people, if you don't want to raise your voice, if you don't want to apply, punishments or whatever you want to call it, those are all the negative parts of being a boss, right? But they're all real. They're not frequent, but they're all real. If you're not ready to do that, then stay in the crew cab with the rest of them, pull hose, break windows, and have fun. And go home, tell your wife, another great day, 3 more fires. But if you want to ride in the front seat, then you better know, and I say it all the time, and Lance kids me around, you're not in the front seat to beat the horn. I actually wrote an article eventually. You're not in the front seat to beat the horn. A lot of fire departments, it's true. The guy in the front seat just has a different color shirt and he beeps the horn. And when they get off, they all just turn back at the fireman. And that's not what we need. Whether you're elected to the front seat in a volunteer department, whether you, take a test in a career department, if you're in that front right seat, if you're a company officer, you got a big responsibility. And I got to, and they should tell people when they start studying and preparing and taking tests. And about a quarter of it is not terribly fun at all.
Yeah. Managing employee fires is gonna happen way more often than fires on the street. So get used to it, get good at it.
Absolutely.
Teach our company officers to be prepared for that.
I've handled more emergencies on the apparatus floor than out in the street, for sure.
Well, John, it's been great hanging out with you as usual.
Absolutely.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you. What a great idea. I love this. The ice cream was great, but not as good as that ride in that Crown Fire engine, man. That was cool.
Oh, man, it's going to be a fun ride over the year. We get to profile old rigs. We get, like I said, we get to tap into some of the generation with the knowledge, and that's what it's all about. So
Excellent.
we get to hang out with guys like you. It's
my pleasure. All my pleasure.
All right. Thanks, John.
Yes, sir.